Hello everyone, this will be the continuation of Field Trips Always and Terribly, written by Itslivybear on AO3. This will be Chapter 6. Everything is on fire. This is fine. Summary: the League looks at a potential new recruit, and Hosu goes up in flames. When Tomura led him to a training room and tossed him a knife, Izuku was understandably surprised. Sure, the older boy had seemed rather open to the idea a few days ago with the sports festival, but to actually give the hero student? It had only been 3 weeks, hopefully he wouldn't be expelled when he got back. The weapon he had already demonstrated proficiency in? It seemed rather foolish. He even hesitated before voicing his concern, but Tomura merely waved him off. "A rogue isn't just their knife," he smiled. "If you really wanted me dead, I'd be dead." Izuku could only stare at that. Could he really? Now that he thought about it, there were certainly other ways to injure or take out people that didn't require his knife, but the thought of hurting Tomura at this point seemed wrong. He frowned a bit, rationalizing that even if he had done something to Tomura, Kurogiri would have caught him and brought him back. That was the reason he hadn't tried to escape. Certainly not anything else. For sure. Definitely. Hopefully. "Anyway," Tomura continued, "don't want you getting rusty. We're looking to add some new party members soon. Sensei wants us to meet one today. Actually, this guy who used to be a vigilante. I can't really remember what his name was, but I think he also used knives. I don't know." He sat off to the side, pulling out a handheld device, and let Izuku just get to work. The training room didn't have a plethora of equipment, just some dummies, mats, and a few weights by the wall, but it was still space to do some working out, something he hadn't really done in earnest for weeks. Sure, he'd done exercise in his room, wanting to keep in shape, but he hadn't held a knife in 3 weeks, and some of the lingering tension eased out of him when his hand closed around the hilt. There wasn't a lot of tension left after 3 weeks. Shouldn't there be more tension? He was with villains and had been kidnapped. By the time he had worked through warm-ups, a nice burn had settled in, and he ran his drills, using the dummies when he wanted a target. He noticed Tomura glancing up from his game every once in a while, vaguely interested in what he was doing. After running through his drill, the other boy spoke up. "Do you know how to pickpocket?" Izuku jumped at the voice and whirled around. "No?" Tomura grinned and set the game down, getting up. He held out his gloved hand for the knife, and Izuku cautiously handed it over, not quite sure where this was going. "I have my gloves right now, so you don't need to worry too much about getting hit by my quirk, but I want you to try to take this knife from me." Okay, that was something he could do. Probably. Wrong. After 5 minutes of struggle, he hadn't even touched the knife, and he was getting frustrated at the extended game of keep away. "Tomura, what's the point of this?" The older boy dodged again, not looking too winded. If you need something someone else has, you want to be able to take it from them. Disarming them is also nice. Rogues should be good at pickpocketing. It's practically in the job description." True enough, what if someone had a gun? If Izuku could take the gun before they even had a chance to draw it, let alone shoot, that would spare him and his allies a lot of pain. Any weapons, really. Or say he was chasing someone that had like a USB stick of important data. If he could just take that easier, the fight wouldn't last as long and people would be safer. His mind moved a mile a minute, absorbing how much this would help him be a hero. He stilled, and the brief moment of surprise was enough for Tomura to send him tumbling to the ground. Red Eyes peered down at him through a curtain of light blue hair. "You good?" He bit his lip. Would he ever be a hero at this rate? Yeah, I'm good. Let's go again. Uraraka read the news of Ingenium's injury and glanced at the back of Ida's head from where he sat, rigid in front of her. He had seemed fine this morning, greeting her and the other students as usual, but looking back, she could see how broken he really was. Finally, she cornered him at lunch. Ida, really, are you okay? He was sitting perfectly straight, but the set of his jaw betrayed him. Of course. I thank you for your concern, but everything is quite all right. She bit her lip, not believing him in the slightest. It's okay to be upset, you know. It's awful what happened, and you weren't expected to be okay. He kept trying to feed her platitudes, and she kept prodding him until finally he broke. How am I ever going to be a hero? She was taken aback. What? He hung his head in his hands, anger and annoyance replaced with grief. I wasn't fast enough to save Midoriya. I can't help my brother, so how the hell am I supposed to be a hero? She blinked at the almost swear from him, but caught on to the first thing he said. Hida, do you blame yourself for Midori getting kidnapped? I wasn't. I wasn't fast enough. The heroes arrived a mere 2 minutes after he was gone. If I'd been faster, stronger, better. No! She yelled, cutting him off. You can't think like that. It wasn't your fault, Midoriya or your brother. You went as fast as you could to get the teachers, and you were nowhere near Hosu. How were you supposed to know Stain would attack your brother? Heroes aren't gods, Ida. They're human. She pulled his hands away from his face, resting them on the table. You're human. She wasn't prepared for the stoic boy to burst into tears, but she could only comfort him as best she could. He certainly wasn't the only one who blamed themselves for Midori getting taken, after all. Tomura, he hissed. That's a serial killer. One of the other benefits of the sports festival was that Tomura had let him watch the news again, so he had been able to watch in horror as they reported on the hero killer, Stain's latest victim. His heart ached for Hida, who had spoken glowingly of his older brother, Ingenium. The reporter had talked about the other murders Stain had committed, and had a basic description of what he looked like, so Izuku could recognize him when he stepped through Kurogiri's portal and into the bar. Yeah, I know, Tomura muttered back, decked out in several hands for the meeting. Sensei thought he'd be a good ad. Said serial killer looked at the two of them and sneered. What are children doing, playing at being villains? Tomura bristled, but Stain peered closer and continued before he could retort. Aren't you that kidnapped brat? The one from UA? Now what are you doing here? He's my rogue, Tomura snapped. They weren't treating him right. Izuku flinched at that, knowing that on some level he was right. For years, he really hadn't been treated right. UA, however, had been different. Hadn't it? And what are your ideals, child villains? What do I have to gain from joining you? This Tomura knew the answer to. We want to destroy your society, to fight back against all the people that's hurt and kill the heroes who dare get in our way. His eyes glinted around the hand. You have some experience killing heroes after all, don't you? Stain grunted. The fakes, yes. Hero society had become corrupted, as you say. Only true heroes like All Might deserve to live. All Might, Tomura spat, is not a perfect hero. Now it was Stain's turn to bristle. He lunged forward, drawing out a knife to embed in Tomura's shoulder. Izuku darted in without thinking, drawing his knife and blocking Stain's. How dare you? The serial killer snarled, and it took everything in Izuku to hold his ground. He heard us! He's just as fake as the rest of them! I'll kill All Might! Stain scoffed, leaning in to press further. He hurt you, did he? What on earth could the simple beast have done to hurt you? He shattered my dreams and left me on a rooftop the same day I was told to kill myself. Izuku wasn't looking at anything really, but the words slipped out, unbidden. He kept going, unable to stop himself. I wanted to be a hero. I still do, I think. I just want to help people, to save them with a smile, but when I told him I was quirkless, he said I couldn't do it. Even after making it into the hero course, he still tried treating me like I didn't belong. Stain furrowed his brow, not quite believing what he was hearing. All Might did that? The same man who said everyone could be a hero in his interviews? His knife eased up just a little. Tomura took the mantle next. I killed my family when my quirk manifested. Izuku startled, not having heard the story before. I didn't mean to. I was 5. I begged people for help, anyone, but civilians and heroes alike passed me by. I wanted All Might to save me, but you know what? He never came. Red Eyes met Stain's, burning in anger. He's not a good hero. He's a fake like the rest. Stain seemed to concede the point to a degree. One's belief would not change in a few moments, after all, especially if one's creed and ideals were built around them. And tentatively asked, then who? Who in this society has any right to call himself a hero if the symbol of peace does not? Surprisingly, it was Tomura who answered. Eraserhead. Underground heroes. They're cool. Stain nodded, acknowledging the answer. They do not work for fame and glory. They are true heroes. So, Tomura leaned against the bar. Do you want to join my party? We'll get rid of the corruption in this society together. Stain pulled back, slipping his knife back into its sheath, somewhere hidden on his person. He cast an appraising eye at Izuku and it took everything in him to meet the gaze. You're pretty cool, kid. I think you'd make a fine hero if those ideals you spouted were true. Tomura huffed, throwing an arm around the smaller boy. Izu would be one of the only good heroes, but we have to tear down everything before we can build it back up again. Stain snorted and turned to face Kurogiri. I'll work with you. Put me back in Hosu. I have business I want to finish there. I'm planning on attacking tonight if you want to join. Without another word, he stepped through the portal, disappearing back into the city he had come from, and both boys sighed in relief. Jeez, Tomura muttered. He didn't need to attack us out of nowhere like that. That was by far the most stressful meeting I've had in my life. Izuku paused, nose crunching up. Then again, meeting with the guidance counselor was always rough. Tomura burst into a raspy laugh. Not meeting me? I'm offended. Izuku snorted and smiled. No, guidance counselors were definitely worse. They laughed for a bit more, riding out the adrenaline rush, before they glanced at the clock. Come on, Tomura murmured. Let's prepare for an attack. Todoroki Shoto grimaced at his father's back. Patrolling Hosu to find a hero killer seemed ridiculous. None of his classmates were in the city, having all chosen to intern elsewhere. Ida specifically wanting to be far from the site of his brother's injury. I'm going to be the best hero I can be, he had proclaimed, so that no one else get hurt. It is best to do that in an environment where I will not get distracted. Shoto could respect that. He certainly wasn't doing any focusing with his father around. He was still trying to get his masterpiece to use his fire to no avail, and Shoto rubbed his arm where a bruise was no doubt going to form from how hard his father had gripped him. At least patrol was boring. People took one look at Endeavor's angry face and scampered off, leaving no one trying to talk to him or Shoto. He could tell some people wanted to, being the second place winner of the sports festival after all, but the flaming garbage can seemed to dissuade them from trying. When the shriek of the Nomu rang over the city and plumes of smoke rose, he was suddenly thrown back to the day at the USJ, watching Midoriya being grabbed by an abomination and subsequently thrown through a portal before Shoto could even think to save him. He shook his head out of his daze as his father bellowed the various heroes and sidekicks around, already lighting up one of Nomu that seemed to absorb his flames and spit them back. They managed to defeat the Nomu present, and Shoto worked on evacuating citizens from the area, not wanting anyone to get hurt by this catastrophe. It seemed like an hour had passed before it started to wind down, and Shoto had never felt more exhausted. Perhaps that's why he didn't hear the leathery flapping of wings until he was being lifted into the air. Through his haze he felt the claws piercing his side, and his exhaustion quickly gave way to panic as he was lifted higher and higher, heading in the direction of a water tower on top of a building. As they approached, he noticed three figures on top, soon joined by another he recognized, with a jolt as Stain. The other two he remembered from the USJ, the Misty Man and the Hand Villain. The fourth, he flinched as he made eye contact. He saw his name mouthed before a cry of "Meteor Punch!" knocked him and the Nomu out of the sky. His head shot up to see Uraraka looking at him with a determined expression. She uncurled her fist and yelled, "Release!" while touching her finger pads together, and she fell with them. The gnome screamed, having come dislodged from his quarry, but it couldn't regain its balance as a small yellow blur dashed out of nowhere and kicked it directly in the exposed brain. "Girl, what the hell were you thinking? I said stay put!" She tapped Shoto, slowing their descent to a nice even pace before muttering, "Release!" again as they touched down, before turning sheepishly to the old man. "Sorry, Gran. Couldn't let another classmate get snatched if I could do something about it. Plus, my quirk is useful for rescue efforts." The old man grumbled something about brats and someone named Toshinori before turning to the bleeding teen. "Boy, you all right?" He didn't answer, turning with wide eyes to Uraraka. "I saw him." "Who?" "Midoriya." In an instant the fire returned to her eyes and she shot forward, looking like she wanted to shake answers out of him, but restraining herself, if only because he was injured. "Where?" He pointed up at the water tower where he had seen the League and Stain, and Midoriya. "Was he alright? Did he look hurt?" He shook his head slowly, mind replaying the scene over and over again. "He wasn't hurt, from what I could see. He was next to Shigaraki, the Mist Villain, and Stain, but he wasn't hurt." She breathed a sigh of relief before her brow crinkled. "He was just standing there, next to three villains?" Shoto didn't have the chance to reply before his father's booming voice ran down the alleyway. He flinched briefly before turning, annoyed. Some might think he was concerned for his son, but Shoto could see the anger from letting himself get taken and injured. That was something quirkless people did, after all, not the son of the number two. He turned back to Uraraka as he was fussed over by the paramedics that had trailed the pro hero. "Tell Sensei." She nodded, face set. They had a lead. And there we go. That was the end of chapter 6. I hope everyone enjoyed. There are quite a few differences from canon in this. The biggest one I'd say Ida not being in Hosu, and Stain joining the League of Villains. Also, I am such a big Stain fan. I love Stain. I'm so happy that we are finally at the part where he's there. I hope we get to see more of him soon. I do believe we get to. Oh, I love Stain. Also, Uraraka interning with Gran Torino. I think everyone knows what that means. She is, of course, the holder of One for All. Honestly, I love when she has One for All. I think it suits her just perfectly. Um, anyways, I hope everyone enjoys, and I hope everyone has a good night. I will see you in the next chapter.